Hello and welcome back. My name is Kabira and this is my YouTube channel, Kabira Speaks. Okay, so today is day 3 of the 12 days of cab. I'm doing 12 days until New Year's Day. Today's day 3. So today we're talking about a phenomenon known as repetition compulsion. Repetition compulsion is very Freudian. You'll see why as I explain what it is. So someone who's traumatized as a child will later in life seek out the same type of trauma. This might mean having poor relationships that mimic the relationships they had with their caregivers who failed them. Or it might mean seeking out dangerous situations that might lead to a similar type of trauma that they endured. So I definitely have seen both types of repetition compulsion in my life. Let's see how hot this coffee is. I just made it. Ooh, when the first sip of Joe hits you. I've definitely seen both examples of repetition compulsion in my life. Oh, and there's another one too. A lot of times when someone is traumatized, they might seek out media that also has traumatic elements to it. Like movies, television, books, music, art. It might be like really dark or disturbing, or again, mimicking the traumatic event that happened when in like the formative years. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that definition makes sense. So let me just show you, like kind of explain what each part of that looked like for me. So I've expressed that I struggle with relationships. I'm someone who's codependent. So what that means is I like lean very heavily on people that I'm in relationships with, either romantic relationships or friendships, and I tend to lose myself in these relationships. I give too much. I merge with the other person and I'll put their needs above my own. That's what being codependent is. It's selfish because it's like it's a control thing. Like, if I do all this stuff for you, then you'll love me and you'll never leave me. So I'm someone who I've had difficult relationships. I'm codependent, and I seek out these relationships because growing up I had inconsistent love patterns. So the relationships I've only had 2 boyfriends, 2 boyfriends and a rapist, 2 like serious boyfriends, but the love that they gave me was inconsistent. They'd love me one day, not the next. They'd love me 1 month, not the next. And I subconsciously sought out people who would give me that type of love, because that's the kind of love I got when I was younger from inconsistent and emotionally immature parents. I actually had a argument, a pretty bad argument yesterday and this morning, so that's why I'm a little down today, but that's okay. It's the 12 days of cabs, so sometimes we're up and sometimes we're down, right? Yeah, so I had relationships where the love I received was like very here today, gone tomorrow, and I'm trying to break that cycle. Now that I recognize it, I'm trying to break it. The second thing, getting into situations that are dangerous is another example of repetition compulsion, or another way that we repeat or seek out the trauma that happened to us. So I, as I've explained before in previous videos, well, maybe you don't know because this is your first video. If this is your first video, welcome. But I was if this is your first time listening to me, then you wouldn't have known, but I was assaulted when I was in college. And later on in my life, I put myself in really sketchy, dangerous situations in which I could have been assaulted again. And luckily I wasn't, but if I just put myself in really dangerous places, like with strangers, people I didn't know, didn't tell anyone where I was going, just like really terrible things. And like looking back on it now, I shudder thinking of what could have happened. And I'm really lucky that nothing did. Ooh, I got an email. I thought I put my phone on airplane mode. Yeah, so I put myself in really dangerous and terrible situations, and I'm so lucky that nothing happened. But that's another way that we have that repetition compulsion, that urge, that subconscious desire to repeat the trauma. It doesn't make sense because it doesn't serve you. But I saw another video and they described it as continuing like a subconscious loop. So when you're young, you get stuck in this loop and you have to really work hard to break it. The third way that we, a third example of repetition compulsion would be seeking out like media that is really mimicking of the trauma that you received. I've done this. I try not to watch things that are too, like, have too much sexual abuse in them because it is so disturbing and I really think it's not good for your mind. But I also am sickly fascinated by like horror and things like that, like serial killer stuff. Even though I find it very, very terrifying, like plaguingly terrifying. I work second shift, and when I drive home at night, like when I stop at a dark stop sign, in my brain, I'm like, oh, I hope someone doesn't bust out of the shadows and slit my throat, because I watch too much dark stuff. And I think I'm drawn to that from trauma that I've endured. Yeah, so those are just like some examples of repetition compulsion in my life. I hope that I kind of explained what it is. Well, I'm not an expert in the subject except for the fact that I've had these loops completed over and over and over again, and I'm trying to break the cycle. I think recognizing it is definitely the first step into figuring things out. But it's hard because those patterns feel familiar and they feel painfully comfortable, I would say. It's like when something happens to you that early, that's what safety begins to feel like. Like, oh yeah, this is normal. This is good. And in fact, when you get the opposite, like when you get stability, that feels uncomfortable. That feels like weird or boring or just like, so your instincts tell you to seek out the people that are going to hurt you. And then if you're codependent, you're going to stay in the relationships with those people who hurt you. And it's just the loop, but it is not permanent. It is something that can be broken. I'm seeing myself, well, I think I'm seeing myself start to break them. I'm certainly aware of them. And being mindful can help you be even more aware. That's something that I'd like to work on in the new year, mindfulness. So we can be mindful by like slowing down or doing things like meditation. I do meditate. Yoga to feel more like at peace or more in your body and more grounded. Journaling is another good idea. These are just things that I'm aware of, but I need to really make them a practice. So that's something that I can be doing for myself, and they might be helpful for you too, maybe. Yeah, so that's repetition compulsion. That's day 3 of the 12 days of CAB. I'll see you tomorrow for, I don't know, I have a big list of topics I want to cover, but I wasn't going to do them in any particular order. I just do them as the spirit leads. Okay, so have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.